which part of the world you look at. And the most recent is this great paper by Astorga on Latin American experience, which gets the same weird positive correlation. We don't want the positive correlation. We don't want high tariffs fostering growth, do we? Come on, we like trade. But that's what's coming out of this data. What the hell's going on? I mean, how can this violate everything we're taught about comparative advantage and gains from trade? Well, first off, maybe they shouldn't be correlating it with per capita GDP growth. Why don't they correlate it with industry growth? And that's what I'm going to do. So let's see. Maybe that'll change everything in terms of the result. And when you do that, who's going to win the race? Is it positive or is it negative? The tariffs good for industrial growth or bad for industrial growth? And the answer is, the answer is, where's the answer? The winner is, can you read that? First of all, the correlation is about as low as you can get. Second of all, check that out. Beep, negative. Negative. That is, if you have high tariffs, you will have lower rates of industrial output growth. What's going on? What's going on is the causation. That's what's going on. The reason why high tariffs and tariffs on manufacturers are associated with slow rates of industrial growth is because of causation. It's the political economy of the thing. That is, those countries which have industries that are struggling have lobbying interests that demand more protection. And they get it. Lousy performance gets you protection. It's not that protection fosters the incentive for growth in industry. What this is beginning to tell you, and we have to look at this more carefully, is we should be spending, in this tariff growth controversy, we should be spending a lot more time examining the causation and see whether we're really observing a political economy. Who gets the protection? Those that make a lot of noise. Those that make a lot of noise are ones that are hurting and have the political power. It's not a story about protection fostering industrial growth. Wow, I thought that was quite a bit to get out of this. Didn't I just do that? Yes, talked about that. I said all that. Yes, I said all that. Okay, here's another possibility on what might be driving, increasing the price of manufacturers in home markets, which would encourage industrial catch-up. What are they doing with the exchange rate? The standard view, if you take a course in European economic history, is that everybody's on the gold standard. What's the big deal? You know, everybody's pegged to gold. So how can the exchange rate matter? Well, open your eyes and look at the rest of the world. And the rest of the world is not on the gold standard, or a lot of it isn't. And when you start then asking what happens to the real exchange rate, that is relative to local prices versus price levels abroad, here's what you get. This is just a start. We have more to do. Between that period and that period, there's not much change in the real exchange rate. But look what happens when you go to that interwar period of rapid industrialization. Extensive exchange depreciation, real exchange rate depreciation. And we know stories by individual countries, especially Latin America, about this, but this is more than just the 30s, and it's more than just Latin America, and looks like it's playing a significant role in the story. What about cheap labor, right? And this is such a great story, too. I love this. It really appeals to theorists. It's so clean and tidy. And basically, the argument is, of course, if you're doing light industry, you start in light industry, labor-intensive industry. And having cheap labor is obviously an advantage. And so the only issue is, does it swamp everything else and play a role? So that's what we're looking at. And is so cool because over the past 150 years, the great gap between levels of living standards and GDP per capita between the rich haves and the have-nots, the third world at the bottom, increased immensely, right? It's only recently that you've been kind of getting that ground back. That's bad news. The good news, however, is that your labor gets cheaper and cheaper compared to the labor in the advanced rich economies. They complain more and more about cheap, unfair foreign competition, right? More and more over time. So if you stay poor, at least you got cheap labor to help you foster industrialization in the labor-intensive industries. Or so you might guess. Well, gee, it's a little hard getting real wages 1870 to 1975 for all these countries, but why don't you suppose we just use GDP per capita as a proxy for wages across country and see how that's correlated with these industrialization catch-ups, and nothing. You don't get anything out of it. It's really weak. So that's not going to be a key source in accounting for the industrialization performance. Here's another possibility. What about the user cost of capital? User cost of capital has got two parts to it. One is the financial part. That is, what are the interest rates on loans that you might use to foster accumulation in the manufacturing firm, or what do you forego by using your own funds to accumulate in your manufacturing firm. So that's one part of the story. And the second part of the story is, what about the price of the quality adjusted capital goods that you're buying, the machines that you're buying? So either one of those things may be drifting over time in a different way than they're drifting for the three leaders. And if the user cost of capital is declining in the Philippines compared to its behavior in Germany, UK, and the US, it gives the Philippines an added advantage in terms of getting cheaper and cheaper capital goods, fosters accumulation, and does all the good things to get you productivity growth, unless something else offsets it. So we're interested then in how over time that the financial interest rate, and the PK, the price of capital goods, behave. The I part, the financial part, is interesting. We know after 18th century, after 1870, global capital markets integrate. So by 1913, they look like they do today. They're extremely well integrated. And part of that process is the newly emerging nations, when they first emerged, including the US, had to pay a premium above the standard rates prevailing in the three leaders.